Okay, so this is my second time recording this video, so I'm gonna apologize up front. And the other day I recorded it, I talked about this ad nauseum, so forgive me if it feels like I'm just going through the motions, because I am! Alright, so here's the deal. I want to talk about this Cain Velasquez situation that happened yesterday. I went through this whole process. Actually, so it happened yesterday for me at this point. I just got finished recording again my daily live stream. However, I wanted to make sure that I covered this Cain Velasquez situation, all the nuance that happened. The court does not allow you to make recordings unless you have permission, which I did not request. There was a lot of recorders and everything else within that court, and you gotta love this era of Microsoft Teams, or Zoom and the like, where everything's remote. So even though I'm in Texas, I can actually be in a court out in California without having to leave the comfort of my own home here. That being said, there's a lot of nuance to this situation going on with Cain right now. I covered it previously and talked about some of the issues that were going on within the case. And this is pretty much exactly where I thought we would be at this point, because Cain was extremely reckless in going after Mr. Goularte. And I think that everybody who cares about it would probably say the same thing, that, hey, if you're actually looking at the facts of the case, you do want Cain to be freed, if you're like myself. However, at the same time, you recognize that Cain didn't help himself out at all. And it's important to note that this is a situation where you're pretty much gonna have to put your feelings on the back burner. How I would normally say that, I'm gonna refrain from saying it right now and say it in a nicer way, that we're gonna refrain from our feelings, is what I'm gonna say for this portion. What I want to get into, and because the other day they had the case, and you had the prosecution, the defense, and the judge all made statements that I think are very interesting, and I wrote them down. I also was able to get online, because some people took better, more meticulous notes than I did, since not being able to record it and to have something I can play back. That being the case, let me just jump into this, because I don't want to sit there and waste everybody's time, but I want to come at it from a different perspective than what you're probably used to, or what you've probably gotten so far. So let's look at this. One of the things I want to highlight, and I'm going to put this in here, because there were statements from both the prosecution, which is interesting because they're in charge of prosecuting not just Harry Goularte, which is who they should be prosecuting, but they also have to prosecute Cain because of what Cain did. So Cain put himself and put everybody else in this position where they now need to prosecute him. And forgive me, I'm gonna be looking at my notes here, because I want to read this. I don't want it to be taken out of context, is the issue that I'm having. And we go through this whole process, and context matters. So so Mr. Griegos is the attorney for Cain Velasquez. He made several statements, and he's constantly harping on certain things that I think is not advantageous for him. And if I'm looking at it from a strategy standpoint, some of it is from a strategy standpoint of he needs to worry about his client and not about the conviction of Mr. Goularte. If I'm smart, I'll take that out. But not from the perspective of trying to get Mr. Goularte convicted. That's going to be on the prosecution. However, it becoming clear, and I think he's going to have to watch his step here, that based off of what the judge stated, and I'm going to put like an addendum, something that the judge told Mr. Griegos right after actually before the judge made her statement, wherein she refused to give Cain bail, which is again what I expected to happen, because Cain was reckless. And she gave the exact synopsis that I provided on that situation as well. And the next time Cain's going to be in court, I'll put it right here. And actually, what I want you to take a look at, his is with a C. Someone asked a question about whether or not it's the same judge or not. I don't know how California works. I do know in Texas, where I'm at, that normally family court and criminal court and civil courts are different courts. And not only are they different courts, but there's different judges that presides over those courts. So you can have a family court judge will not be the same as a criminal court judge normally, right? I'm sure there's an exception somewhere, but in Harris, Montgomery, Fort Bend counties and the like around here, Tarrant, those are counties where normally, and all the examples I've seen, are the judges are over one court, right? This is not like some small area out in Podunk, wherever. This is in major metropolises. So if you have a family court case that's being tried in family court, there's a high likelihood, again, I can't speak to a certainty because I'm not in California and I don't try cases in California, but there's a high likelihood if it works like it does in Texas, then it's going to be a different judge for those cases, and I'll show you why in a moment here. But if you look at that C that's there, that tells you it's in criminal court. You go up in there, and you go down, and you can see the next date that Cain actually has an appearance before the court, a hearing date before the court for the plea is, I believe, is the 14th. It's either 14th. No, I believe it's the 14th for him. And the reason why I'm confused right now is I'm gonna put it right here as well for Mr. Goularte. His in, if you see it starts with the F, his in family court. So I'm gonna assume that means that it's a different judge that trying his case, although it's the same district attorney's office, not the same prosecutor, obviously, but the same office. And his is on a different date. It's the day, I believe it's the day before the 13th, but you'll see it's right down here. That being said, when going through and looking at it, so Cain, he's going to be held. He's held without bail. He's not going to be able to get out. Why? Because of, let me just read the judge's words, and that way, and you can follow along as well. And I'm going to highlight what's really important here. So it says, the court has had an opportunity to review the 37 letters that were sent this morning. This is coming directly from the judge. Her name is Judge Shailena V. Brown, right? And you know what? Let me just put her picture. Well, actually, I'll put her LinkedIn information down here, because before she was a judge, she was an attorney, and an attorney for the defense, for a public defender working for the defense, right? So she would have been on the Cain side, or actually in the Mr. Goularte side as well, because they're both now defendants as opposed to prosecutors. So she wouldn't be in the prosecutor's office. She would be the side that's representing the individuals who are trying to defend themselves against the prosecutors, right? So she's on the other side of the prosecutor before she became a judge, which means she should have more empathy for Cain and Mr. Goularte in both of them, but now they're both defendants. And you might go, how does that work? Well, Cain put himself in if you watch my last video, he only had one shot at this, and he screwed up his one shot. Let me give you an analogy, and I really want to hop into this, but in football, it's often been said, and whoever knows who the coach is who said this, I can't remember and give them proper attribution right now, but that whenever you throw the ball, whenever you pass the ball, there's only three things that can happen. And of the three things that can happen, two are bad, right? So they can catch it, it's completion, that's good. They can not catch it, it's an incompletion, that's a bad thing. Or it gets intercepted, that's a bad thing. And somebody might say pick six, but it's still an interception. And then you got the six. Anyway, so there's only three things that can happen. In Cain's case, there were three options that could have happened, and all of them would have resulted in either him being dead or him getting jail time. And as a father, I guarantee you, he was okay with any of those things, right? Or any of those options. So if he succeeded and he killed Mr. Goularte, which I'm sure that was what he was gunning for at that point, no pun intended, he would have got sit down time at that point. If he failed, or if he walked up there and Mr. Goularte was also armed and shot him instead, and he died, that would have been something that would have been bad. Or if he failed the way that he failed in this particular instance, and he didn't get Mr. Goularte, but he got somebody else, right? Or he didn't get Mr. Goularte. And any of those circumstances, if he failed, succeeded, or if he was the one who was actually murdered in this situation, all of those means he only had one opportunity in order to make this happen. And he squandered it when he did, as in the way that he did it, and the fact that he wasn't successful. I hate saying it that way, but that's the reality. He squandered his opportunity. He had the opportunity, but he's not going to get a second chance. And contrary to what Mr. Gallegos, this attorney, said, that there's no chance of him trying to finish a job, I'm a firm believer in you trust people, right? You trust people to be themselves. You don't trust the stories that they tell you, right? You get to know a person by their actions over time, or their actions when they're highly emotionally charged. Then you get to see the true nature, true character of an individual. And in this situation, Cain seeing a person as a father, myself being a father, you see someone who's molesting your child, you become enraged, you become angry, and there's not a whole lot that's going to sit there. If you know for a fact that this person harmed your child that you would not do, you would be happy to take that sit down. So when his counsel, when his attorney says he would not do it, I've seen the character. I know what you're capable of. I've noted because I'm a fan. I've watched you in the cage. I know what you're capable of then. But even now, as a father, I know what you're capable of, and I've seen what you've done. I don't have to hear you telling me something. Who am I gonna believe? Me or you and my lying eyes, right? I don't need you to try and play me like a pimp. We're good. That being said, let me just read this. So here are the words of Judge Brown and what she said. She says, "This court has had an opportunity to review the 37 letters that were sent this morning, many of them from lawyers and other professional and court figures and prominent figures in the community. I've reviewed the statement of facts. I've reviewed the articles that were presented here in court. The court acknowledges the courtroom is full of supporters for Mr. Velasquez. It looks like Microsoft Teams, the virtual platform, is filled with reporters." Yeah, it was. That was hard for me to get into. "The court says all these things to say that what is important in this court is the law. I'm going to apply the law to the facts as I understand them to be. I believe that the court has to review Article 1, Section 12 of the California prosecution, which talks about acts involving violence upon another person. The facts are clear here that this was an alleged act of violence according to laws. Following an individual, chasing an individual for some miles, ramming individuals with his vehicle, and shooting at the individuals at point-blank range. The court, reviewing those facts, understands the surrounding circumstances. It is clear to this court," and this is where it really gets sticky. It says, "It's clear to this court there is clear and convincing evidence," that's going to be the standard they're using, as opposed there's preponderance of evidence, clear and convincing, and there's beyond a reasonable doubt. There is clear and convincing evidence that there is substantial likelihood that will result in great bodily injury, not just to the named complaint witness in the case, that being Mr. Goularte. He's the main complaint witness. That's who Cain was obviously after, that everybody recognizes who he's after. But to Santa Clara residents at large. And this is where the hammer gets dropped at this point. Because it's no longer just about Cain and Mr. Goularte. Now it's about the residents of Santa Clara as well as Mr. Goularte. Of course, a father wants to get a hold of him, but now you also have to worry about what would Cain do if anyone else gets in the way. What's the collateral damage? And this is what she covers. She says, "This case involves allegations of extreme recklessness to human life, ramming a vehicle in the middle of the day where our citizens are out driving, going about their business, and shooting out of a car at other individuals, which is reckless by any standard. Anyone could have been injured, anyone could have been killed. When this court looks at Article 1, Section 12, at this level of risk, the court must take into consideration," right? So she can't just sit there and blow it off like, "Oh, well, he's a father. Anybody would do it," but she has to also think about the citizens of the community as well, not just about a father who wants revenge or vengeance on Mr. Goularte. With that said, the court is making a ruling that the risk is too great. There will be no bail set at this time, right? And that's substantial because here the judge has made her decision quite clear. She has stated explicitly why Cain is not getting bail, right? She didn't state it like, "Oh, I can't give Cain bail and I can give Mr. Goularte." She has nothing to do with the Goularte case, right? As a matter of fact, one of the things that she stated in that regard, she told this to Cain's attorney when he was presenting his case as to why it was that he believed that Cain should be eligible for bail. It says, "Mr. Gallegos, this court is not juxtaposing one case against another." In other words, pitting the two cases as to which one is. It says, That is not my job. My job is to deal with the case that is before the court. That's what any judge is supposed to do. The Velasquez case is before the court. This court is not at liberty to look at other cases in the media or the case of Goularte. So the judge is saying, I'm not considering the Goularte case. That's a separate case. That's for that judge to deal with over there. However, that judge rules on that case, that's what that judge will do, right? What she's focusing on right now is Cain. Is there an attempted murder? Is it murder in the first or murder in the second? Did he shoot out of the window of a vehicle? Her whole thing that she's going to be considering, and that the jury's going to have to consider, is Cain. And what the court is going to normally, if the prosecution is successful, they're going to try and limit the amount of information about the Goularte case that can come in. And it appears that the judge is in favor of that, because most defense attorneys like to do that as well whenever they're dealing with something. We don't want the prosecution bringing in information from something else that a person did so long ago or way back when into a case that's before the court right now. The question is, did this person do this act? And that's where we're at right now with Cain. Did Cain do this? Is what's before the court. Not, is he justified? That would be a defense. And if you go through, and I'm not going to go through it this time, what I will do in a couple days, I'm going to go through the actual counts, and I'll walk through each of those counts, and if there's any defenses to those counts, and and whether or not they apply to Cain or not, the elements that need to be met for Cain to actually get off, or to be convicted, or to get off, and we'll cover that in another episode here, probably tomorrow. I'll probably do that tomorrow. After I finish my interview tomorrow, I'll sit down and I'll put that one together. But the important thing right now is understanding that Cain is not in a good position. And strategy-wise, if I'm really looking at it strategy-wise, from his defense team, they're doing good in trying to keep Cain's name in the news. I don't know if I would push so hard, but it's not on him, on his defense team, to try and make sure that Goularte doesn't get convicted. As a matter of fact, if you're his defense lawyer, hey, if he kills Goularte, you get more money later on down the line because you get to represent him again, right? If Goularte gets off. But what you're more concerned with right now is getting your client off. And if that means that Goularte has to walk in the meantime, so be it. But at the same time, having him sit down for the time that he's doing might not be the worst thing. And I'm thinking of it from the standpoint of Goularte's case kind of goes before his case. Whether or not Goularte gets convicted or not kind of either gives credence that you have a convicted child molester, but then again, you're looking at whether or not the prosecution is going to be able to suppress that evidence and keep that evidence from coming in for the jury to hear about it. And for Goularte, that would be, the more that they push, that's probably going to be beneficial to them, because I don't know if if California works the same as Texas, and even on the federal level, on trying to get the case moved, right? For Goularte to say, hey, I can't get a fair trial here, because normally you have to have what they call personal jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction, and venue. And those are all fancy terms, but what you're concerned with right now is that the venue might not be proper, or that you can't get a fair trial in that venue because everybody is aware of everything else, and there's a prejudicing of the jury against the client or the defendant. And so they might be able to say, hey, with all this publicity being drummed up, maybe we need to hold Goularte's case someplace else. I'm going to put a link to that information, or let you take a look at it if it isn't already scrolling down below here, on what's going on. I say the court that they're actually in, when their cases are, or the next hearing date, rather, not the cases, but when their next hearing dates are, so that you can kind of get an understanding of what that looks like. And in the meantime, that's going to be it for the day. I'm going to go over the counts, what Cain is actually dealing with, and what it actually looks like from this perspective of what the law actually said. That's what I want to deal with next, is what the law actually says about what's going on against Cain. I like how Gallegos, he is trying to muddy the water, but it's probably not going to work that well in court, especially if they can get that information suppressed. And it looks like the judge is going to do that, because she already mentioned her thing is not for the other case. That's another judge that'll be judging Goularte. Her thing is that she needs to judge Cain, and that's the issue that you're going to be having. She's judging Cain, she's not judging Goularte. And I know that everybody, we're lumping it all in, but unfortunately that's not how the system works. The system works, that you don't lump it all in as to what he can raise that as a defense. Actually, he might not be able to raise it as a defense. Then I'll talk about why here later. And actually, that'll be in about a day or so when I go over the cameras. That being said, love you. Be blessed. May you always have peace in your life. And we are out.